Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to Measures of Green Urbanism. Today we are going to start with our week 4 of lecture, and the topic of our lecture is accessibility. In this lecture we will be discussing about various concepts and definitions of accessibility, connectivity, traffic, mobility, as well as transit oriented development. The common terms related to accessibility are, there are a number of terms which are often used in an overlapping way. So, accessibility primarily deals with the ability to reach opportunities. These opportunities can be interactions, these opportunities can be related to job as well as related to other similar interactions. And it depends, the level of accessibility depends upon the quality of existing transportation infrastructure, whether public transportation is present or not, as well as connectivity. The focus is on reaching destination, thereby accessibility depends on distance, it depends upon the available modes, the cost associated with availing of different modes, and the time associated with availing different modes as well. So, when each of these factors increase in value, they work as an impedance and the overall accessibility decreases. For example, if distance increases between origin and destination, the accessibility decreases. So, when we are talking about mobility, mobility is talking about the efficient movement of people as well as goods, whereas traffic is mostly concerned about vehicular movement, and connectivity is a property that is derived from the network or transportation network. So, we can assess connectivity of existing railway transportation network, road transportation network, and as well as air and water transportation network also, where the number of services often represent the network. So, it is necessary to make public places more accessible irrespective of the socio-economic groups, irrespective of gender, in order to achieve sustainability. Accessibility is a major component of Sustainable Development Goal number 11, and better accessibility leads to better social cohesiveness, it is more inclusive, and mixed land use is an indirect impact of good accessibility, and it is also good for the economy. Moving ahead, we already know that accessibility is related to reaching destinations or activities rather than simply ease of traveling along a network, and there are several measures of accessibility. They differ depending on what these measures are actually trying to calculate or evaluate. So, whenever we are talking about an accessibility matrix, the accessibility matrix between a number of locations is talking about the potential opportunities of interaction between these locations. Potential accessibility is based on the assumption that a destination's attractiveness decreases with increasing distance, increasing travel time, as well as increasing travel cost. The overall destination attractiveness, however, is dependent upon the availability of certain opportunities. These availabilities can be related to, say, number of jobs or number of people or overall population, etc. So, overall accessibility is calculated based upon these 4 factors of distance, cost, travel time and travel mode, as well as the purpose of travel. So, of the major different types of measures of accessibility, we can categorize them into 4 categories. The first one is infrastructure based accessibility measure. Here, the quantity and quality of linear and spot facilities of transportation infrastructure is measured. So, we are mostly talking about the distribution and density of certain facilities as well as the coverage of these facilities. Next, we have the distance based accessibility measure, where the actual physical distance between origin and destination is taken into consideration. Along with that, the cost of this travel between origin and destination is also considered. So, distance based accessibility measure is again a very commonly used accessibility measure. So, in here the third one is the person based accessibility measure. This is an individual based accessibility measure. So, the previous 2 accessibility measures can be used at different scales or at scales of urban area. For example, we can use distance based accessibility measure within a city. We can use distance between different locations at a regional scale or at a regional scale or at a sub-regional scale as well. Person based accessibility measure is based on individual travelers' preferences. It is also known as a utility based measure. Basically, it tries to find out what utility a person can derive based upon their choice of mode, etc., or choice between 2 locations as well. So, from here we move on to the gravity based measure. So, gravity based measure is again a kind of distance based accessibility measure, where people look into the cost that is necessary to move between origin and destination. So, it includes travel cost, that is its primary focus. And in here people also look into the by means of attractiveness. So, what attracts people from say origin to destination? There can be the frequency of a certain service, the overall number of people traveling, it can be based on the facility size, it can be based on population, etc. So, essentially this measure tells that in one location, say A, what is the accessibility of point B from point A. So, it is looking at both point A as well as point B, but mostly from a standpoint of point A. So, what is the accessibility at a location with respect to certain opportunities at specific distances? Then we have the cumulative opportunity measure, and in the cumulative opportunity measure, the potential opportunity that can be reached within a predetermined travel time is included. So, it is also dependent upon the availability of the opportunity. Almost similar is the third accessibility measure, which is known as isochronic accessibility measure, and it is measured by estimating the set of destinations that can be reached within a specified travel time at a specified travel cost or effort. And the cumulative opportunity measure as well as the isochronic based opportunity measure are all one location specific. So, as gravity based measure was looking at it needed at minimum 2 locations. So, in here for cumulative opportunity measure as well as for isochronic accessibility measure, it is giving us accessibility focused on one location. And lastly, we have the spatial accessibility measure, which depends upon the configuration and shaping of a network. So, it is more like a connectivity based accessibility measure, and it is derived from graph theory. So, from these different measures of accessibility, we find that accessibility can be measured at different scales, at different levels, and what it is trying to convey is dependent on the purpose of how we are defining that particular measure. So, usually when we are measuring sustainable mobility, which is also looking into the aspect of accessibility at a national level, there are certain common factors that are considered that makes it easier to compare nations, particularly in regards to the sustainable development goal. So, in reality, there is no sustainable development goal specifically for transportation domain, but we have accessibility as a core part of sustainable development goal number 11. So, within in order to reach sustainable accessibility or sustainable mobility, the certain factors have been identified as core in ensuring that nation are able to achieve these goals within a specified time. So, of which there are two aspects: the mobility in terms of rural areas as well as in terms of urban areas have been categorized or divided into these two categories. So, we have a factor such as universal rural access, which looks into the proportion of rural population who live between 2 kilometers of all weather road. Similarly, in case of universal urban access, it considers the other sub factors such as rapid transit to resident ratio and comparing urban population of over 5 lakh who live within certain lengths of rapid transit lines. Safety is a major factor. So, within the measure of safety, we have fatal road traffic related injuries or deaths per lakh population. We also look into the pollution, air pollution, particularly population weighted exposure to ambient PM 2.5 pollution levels, GHG emissions per capita or carbon dioxide emissions per capita, access to transport services, which is measured in terms of bus and metro stops per square kilometer, and public finance or the transport share of a city's budget, and affordability, which is measured by looking into the percentage of household expenditure in relation to transportation as compared to its income. In sustainable mobility, the other factors that are also considered are the modal split, which is the share of total trips made by public transportation, the rider connectivity, which looks into supporting features like Wi-Fi access in public transportation, universal access, which is measured by wheelchair access in bus and metro stations, and active commuting, which is active mode of travel, that is share of commuters who use cycling or walking in order to go to work. And airport passengers are also included, which is annual passenger traffic for using air related accessibility, and hours of metro accessibility, which looks into the operational hours of metro service, and also congestion and delay, which is one negative aspect that do impact population, which is measured by the amount of travel time, the average commuting time, and utilization with respect to average number of public transportation trips per capita. Now, when sustainable mobility index was calculated or derived initially, these were the factors that were included. Later, these factors were expanded to make it more comprehensive. So, in case of a mobility performance, the common factors that are always measured are in terms of safety, which are the positive side of factors. And in safety, we again measure the traffic related fatalities and serious injuries. We always look into the shared mobility aspect or integrated or shared mobility, which looks into the ease of using different services. So, integrated ticketing options, car sharing system, bike sharing system, private vehicle dependency. Pollution is again a very significant factor where we look into the population's exposure to PM 2.5, PM 10, carbon dioxide emissions per capita, as well as air quality. So, as similar to the sustainable mobility measure, here also we find that investment in transportation as a percentage of overall budget relative to an urban area is an important measure. Regulatory environment makes ease of transition between policy and execution. So, that is also an important factor that should be considered while we are evaluating performance in relation to mobility. Similarly, sustainable initiatives such as length of bicycle lanes, then mass transit share, modal share, etc. are also important aspects. The overall length of railway network, the number of light railway stops, the peak frequency of metro usage, the average waiting time of public transportation. So, these are all related to use of mass transit or mass transit options. Transport affordability in terms of average parking fee, average cost of hired vehicle, fuel price per litre, monthly transportation costs, modal share, minimum daily wage are also an important aspect. So, when we are talking about versatility, we are talking about the variations or the options in terms of different presence of different modes. For example, tram, light rail, ride sharing services, presence of paratransit modes, etc., as well as private car dependency. So, the subjective aspect of mobility performance is related to user satisfaction, particularly for public transportation, and there are also certain negative aspects that needs to be measured, which is in terms of congestion or the time spent in congestion, the driving time to a city center in peak hours, again dedicated bus lane, but there is an overlap between sustainable initiatives existing of transit supply lines, transportation affordability, user satisfaction. So, the Global Sustainability Mobility Index, which was later expanded and created by Sustainable Mobility for All, was used so that different nations could assess their performance in relation to transportation system, particularly with respect to these 4 categories of universal access, efficiency, safety and green mobility. And in here at least 60 country level indicators were used, and there are 7 principal indicators. These 60 indicators, including the 7 principal indicators, are divided or categorized into these 4 categories of universal access, safety, efficiency and green mobility. Each indicator is scored between 0 to 100 on the 4 goals, where all 4 goals have equal weightage. The measurement of indicators in terms of these 4 goals are lead more or are more related to the principal indicators in comparison to the all the indicators that are present. So, the principal indicators include rural access index, rapid transit to resident ratio, percentage of female workers in transportation, the logistics performance index, which is new, road traffic fatal injury or deaths per lakh population, which is related to safety, and was included previously. Population weighted exposure to ambient PM 2.5 pollution, which has now been categorized under green mobility, and transportation related GHG emissions per capita, which is also included under green mobility. Now we will be looking into these 4 goals separately, and we will be looking into the indicators included within each goal. With respect to the Global Sustainability Mobility Index 2022, these are the rankings of the nations, and in here of course we see that the overall index score is varying between 80 to 86.22 in terms of the first top 7 countries. India's rank in terms of the Global Sustainability Mobility Index is 85. So, with respect to the goal of universal access, the 3 principal indicators are Rural Access Index, Rapid Transit to Resident Ratio, and Workers in Transport who are female. In here, within this index, we also have indicators related to air transportation, including freight. We have airport connectivity index, we have rail connectivity index, we have the length of overall railway lines, we have freight which is measured in million tons per kilometer, and the registered carrier departures worldwide with respect to air transport. We also include the port related indicators, which is number of port calls, number of registered vehicles, quality of airport infrastructure and quality of port infrastructure are the other indicators included in here. The overall value of goods transported through railway network, railroad density, the passengers carried in railway are also included. If we look into the other goal of safety, we have the principal indicator, which is mortality caused by road traffic injury per lakh population. We have the overall attribute of road related traffic deaths for alcohol or attributed to alcohol, and mortality caused by road traffic injury for female, for male, and as well as the reported percentage of seriously injured people who were transported by ambulance. When we are talking about the other 2 goals of efficiency and green mobility, we find that in efficiency the principal indicator is logistic performance index, which is again a relatively subjective measure, which is again measured in ordinal scales of 1 to 5. And in here in logistics, we are looking into the logistical services with respect to the carriage capacity of vehicles, particularly water oriented transportation, the average size of vessels, the container port output, the control of corruption, digital adoption index, and efficiency of air transport service is also included as well. We are also looking into the export by main service in relation to the fiscal amount that is involved, and the good governance index etc. are also included. So, in here all logistic related indicators are included, whether it be air based logistics services or water based logistics services. So, within green mobility, the principal indicator are related to exposure to pollutants such as PM 2.5 and transportation related greenhouse gas emissions, which is measured in terms of carbon dioxide emissions per capita. The other indicators are related to are the supporting factors which lead to adoption of more cleaner means of energy, such as access to electricity, which will be measured in relation to percentage population who have that access, the carbon dioxide emissions in relation to road transport per capita, carbon dioxide emissions for overall transportation per capita, the electricity produced from oil, gas or other coal based sources, the energy transition index, fossil fuel energy consumption, and mortality rate which is attributed to household and ambient air pollution, age standardized for female, for male and for all other groups included. So, in here PM 2.5 pollution or population, the percentage of population who are exposed to PM 2.5 far exceeding the levels as mentioned by WHO guidelines, the renewable energy consumption and total transportation related greenhouse gas emissions. So, these are the overall indicators for sustainable mobility index and sustainable mobility performance evaluation. So, with this we will end today's lecture. We will be continuing with other accessibility related topics in the next lecture. Thank you.